Welcome back to the Tavern, World Builders. Today we are talking about the horror romance novel Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. Beware, here there be spoilers. If you have not read this book yet, consider yourself warned. But before we jump into that, we have an exciting development, which is we have set up an RSS feed for our Patreon exclusive episodes. Yay! These are world-building workshop episodes. If you have not yet listened to any, they are really fun, in my unbiased opinion. We take you through building an element from a sci-fi or fantasy world, and you can then take that element and use it in your own world building, or you can build your own using the handy-dandy list of questions that we set out for you. The first episode is actually free for everybody, so definitely listen to that even if you're not a patron. And if you are a patron, at long last, you can listen to these episodes on any podcast app of your choice rather than just on the Patreon site, which is super convenient, if I must say so myself.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never set up an RSS feed before, not to worry, we will have instructions posted on Patreon that will get you set up. With that announcement out of the way, let's dive into our episode. Grab an ale, non-alcoholic always available, and pull up a chair. I'm Emma, your friendly barkeep, along with Allison.
Hi.
And Christiana.
Hello.
And we are so happy to have you here. Cheers.
Cheers.
For anyone who has not read this novel or who needs a little bit of a refresher, please enjoy this description, which I have pulled from Goodreads. Shasheshin is a shapeshifter who happily resides as an amorphous lump at the bottom of a ruined manor. When her rest is interrupted by hunters intent on murdering her, she constructs a body from the remains of past meals, a metal chain for a backbone, borrowed bones for limbs, and a bear trap as an extra mouth. However, the hunters chase Shasheshin out of her home and off a cliff. Badly hurt, she's found and nursed back to health by Homily, a warm-hearted human who has mistaken Shasheshin as a fellow human. Homily is kind and nurturing and would make an excellent co-parent, an ideal place to lay Shasheshin's eggs so their young could devour Homily from the inside out. But as they grow close, Shasheshin realizes humans don't think about love that way. Shasheshin hates keeping her identity secret from Homily, but just as she's about to confess, Homily reveals why she's in the area. She's hunting a shape-shifting monster that supposedly cursed her family. Has Shasheshin seen it anywhere by any chance? Eating her girlfriend isn't an option. Shasheshin didn't curse anyone, but to give herself and Homily a chance at happiness, she has to figure out why Homily's twisted family thinks she did. Dun dun dun! Like we said up top, this is a horror romance, although we might debate that a little bit. I know we have lots of feelings and thoughts about this book.
Yes.
So let's jump right into Happy Hour. What did we all think of this book? Whose suggestion was this one? I think it was Christiana's.
It was mine. I hadn't read it.
Yeah.
I just thought it looked really interesting. I thought Christiana would like it because they really like horror.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was very curious about it.
And I didn't like it. I'm sorry. I loved so many parts about it. And I want to say up front, I'm going to say negative things about this book. And if you really loved this book, that is fantastic. There are so many things to love about it. If you hated this book, that's also fair. Because both horror and romance are so subjective. It could be quite polarizing when you put those two things together. I loved the first two chapters where Shasheshin, is that right?
Yes, that is the correct pronunciation.
Okay. I pronounce it differently in my head. Where Shasheshin is awoken and you're trying to figure out what she is, and like the descriptions of her taking the chain into her body and absorbing bones and rocks and stuff like that. And having the bear trap come out of her chest and bite off someone's arm and everything. I was like, this is so up my alley. I love it so much. And then, so the first like 15% of the book I adored. And then from like 15% to about 80%, I hated. And then 80% to 90% I loved. And then the last 10% I also kind of hated. Like, it was really weird for me.
Interesting.
I started the book and I was like, this is so good. I'm going to be obsessed. And then it was entirely romance heavy and not the kind of romance I like. It was very insta-love. Like, they dance once and then decide to run away together. I don't like that kind of romance. I like romance. I was like, there's no longing. There's no, like, stolen kisses or glances or anything. Like, I like a slow burn. And this was very, like, and then they danced and now they're madly in love. And they're running away together. And then it focused on that for such a long time.
That was, the big part of the middle was that story.
Was just them being in love with, like, little to no conflict. And so that I found
Christiana
really hard
hates
to get
happy,
through.
healthy love. Not that this is a happy or healthy relationship during most of the story at all. But
I already have a very happy, healthy marriage. I want stress. I
need angst
misery.
in my fiction.
I need angst. Yeah. Once I probably got about halfway through, I was like, I don't even want to finish this, but I need to finish it. And then I'm glad I did, because there were other really, really amazing parts in it, like with the offspring that Sheshanen produces
Creates.
and the fights and finding out that Homili's mom is also another creature and is also Sheshanen's mom, but in a different way. Sheshanen, sorry.
Just if Christiana says it's the monster.
It's the monster.
Yeah, I had a very similar like reading journey to you, I think. My percentages were a little bit different, so I loved it. I was literally thinking to myself, this is going to be my new favorite book. The first 30%, I adored. I loved the beginning. I loved the body horror. I didn't even mind the insta-love. For me, it was like, it just, the way it was described, it felt very much like, oh, this is a monster who's not used to having feelings and then immediately falls in love. So I'm like, okay, it's just a monster thing. That's just how, so like that part for me was fine. And then it got into like, Homili's horrible, abusive family, and I'm just like, this makes me so uncomfortable, which I understand is the point of horror, but like for me, I was just like, I feel so emotionally uncomfortable, and I'm like, body horror discomfy, I love. This kind of discomfy, don't love.
I think mainly it was just pacing. Whereas, Emma, with you thinking Murderbot should have been a longer story, I think this should have been a shorter story.
This could have been shorter for sure. Yeah.
Like,
if you
I
cut
think
out
if
the
you
middle,
cut,
in my opinion.
If you cut out not even
the
just
first 30,
the middle,
the last 20 would have been great in my opinion.
Just even 100 pages. If you had cut 100 pages from this, for me, I really struggled with the pacing of it because it was so fast. It was so interesting, and then it just got so slow, and it kind of felt. I'm so sorry for people who love the book, and on the off chance the author listens to this, wonderful writer, you're great. But the middle just felt like a little bit of a slog, and like a pretty long slog. Like I said, I think if you cut 100 pages from it to kind of correct for some of that pacing, I would have devoured it and loved it.
Allison, what did you think? Christiana and I have now monologued. What were your thoughts for this book?
Very similar to both of you. I really liked the first few chapters. This book has a really neat hook, which is that it's narrated by a monster instead of by a human. And so I really loved just the different body, or I don't know if you'd call what she has a body, but and how she assimilated bones and like the just kind of gruesome nature of how she put herself together to look human. It was really neat. So yeah, I really liked the first bit, and similar to you too, I was like, oh, this is gonna be really good. And then it's evolved into a romance, and romance is not my genre. I don't feel capable of saying this was a bad novel, because I think it did a good job of what it was doing.
Bad. And like I said,
I actually think the pacing is fine too.
Oh, really?
It's just not for me.
Yeah.
And just this is romance with horror elements is how I would maybe describe it, as opposed to like
a horror with romance. This is a romance with some body horror.
And personally, I think I would have liked horror with a bit of romance in it better.
Yeah.
But I know lots of people, there are like rave reviews about this book, so
totally.
lots of people are loving it.
So, definitely. It's like, this was not our cup of tea, but it's not a bad cup of tea. This is a well-prepared cup of tea.
It was like
for
very well written, like at a line level.
Oh,
like,
and some of the things that the characters say to each other are so poignant and like made me feel like so emotional. And it's just like the emotional. I thinking about it, I was like, if he had done it, just like kind of a Beauty and the Beast thing with a little bit more horror, like a little bit more just the two of them without all of her awful family and stuff. I was like, ooh, maybe I would have liked that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just again, for like, me personally,
a bizarre amalgamation of The Thing, but if it was from point of view of The Thing, and then Crimson Peak a little bit with that kind of gothic romance, and then The Book Eaters, which we covered last season, where it's that kind of like obligate carnivore sort of like, how do you deal with it and what are the ethics of it? But I just feel like this book didn't. I wanted them to explore the world more.
Yeah. But that's not the story it was telling, which is always like, if you like fringes of it, it's like, oh yeah, if it would have gone in this direction, wouldn't that have been awesome?
But one of my favorite tropes is a character who doesn't understand social norms.
Yes,
I don't know why. I just love that.
Yes,
she
that
was
his thing.
The main character does
Yeah.
not understand and just like blurts things out, like, and it's like it's so refreshing. I just find
she was
people
very
who
cute.
say
I
what
really
they're
liked
thinking.
her.
Yeah.
No, I loved the main character too. Same with there was one line in particular that I was like, ooh, funny but also cutting, where Homily asked Sheshenin
Almost Sheshenin.
Sheshenin, oh my god.
You were
Sorry.
so close.
Asked her, like, are you funny on purpose or are you just funny because that's what people have decided you are? And I was like, ooh.
I wasn't prepared to be attacked like this. What is
Yeah, I was like, that hurt my feelings a little bit. Okay. So.
All right, I think it's time to get into the meat of our discussion, no pun intended, with this very carnivorous book. But let's dive into Tavern Talk. So, like we kind of talked about, this is both a horror and a romance to different degrees. So do you want to talk about first how it fits into or doesn't fit into the horror genre and how the world uses some of those horror elements?
Despite there being some body horror elements of how Sheshenin's body works, this has felt way lighter in tone than most horror novels. Like it almost has elements of a comedy as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Which comedy horrors do exist and they're very good.
Yeah, that's a thing, for sure.
But
because
wasn't
of the
quite
romance
comedy.
and comedy adding like two lighter elements, it felt a lot less horrific to me.
Yeah, the body horror, I think it was touched on in the description a little bit, but just again, for anybody who hasn't read it. So this monster in like its neutral format is kind of just like a blob of goo. And then she has to absorb other things, like make herself a skeleton so she can give herself shape. And sometimes this is like actual skeletons of people she's eaten. Sometimes it's like, like we talked about, like a bear trap or like a chain or like twigs or like pieces of metal. So, and then she can like make herself look human if she has these pieces of herself and can like give herself vocal cords and ears. And sense of smell comes up a lot of time because she doesn't usually give herself a sense of smell. So it's really weird for her when she has a sense of smell.
But she does give herself extra livers and pancreases and things like that. Yeah.
Just in case you need one, which is great. Yeah, the body horror descriptions, like Wiswell does a great job of that. It's just like, it's very visceral, like the deaths, the like way she like kills people and then like eats them and absorbs them is like, oh.
And I actually don't like body horror, but I loved this. I think because it's not a human, like it's a monster, so there's a degree of separation between me and this character.
That's fair.
And I think also often body horror is things, you see things like The Fly, or where it's like you already had this body and there's things being added to it against your will, or you're transforming in some way you can't control. I think the difference here is that she is in absolute control of this. And it's not removing something from her and it's not adding something against her will. She is fully conscious and deciding, I'm going to take that piece of rebar as a tibula and go on with my day so I can continue eating other people kind of thing. So I think that's what makes it really interesting. It's almost like a twist on body horror in that sense. I also think of The Thing a lot with this. The horror classic, John Carpenter's The Thing. That is something that gets into your skin and can wear you and imitate and mimic people. And it creates that same like who's who sort of scenario. But that, again, is against your will and it's all that kind of stuff. So it's almost like The Thing, but from point of view of The Thing. And I really appreciated that part of it.
It starts in an abandoned mansion, which is just like
that's a classic,
very classic.
Yeah, very, very.
So I liked it. I just loved the first few chapters in that mansion where she's just waking up, and then a group of people come in to try and slay her. And it's very
and
fun.
the description of her hot spring. So. Like she hibernates every winter in a hot spring and like describing how it's like gross and smells so bad that everyone's gagging and there's like a thick layer of scum over it. Like that's gritty and that's gross. And like that to me was very horror.
Yeah.
The whole abandoned mansion with this horrifying little cesspool with this monster living underneath it. It was really good.
It was very fun.
Yeah. It also definitely has the trope we talked about, like, the like monster can be anybody. So that kind of like psychological thing, which doesn't come through as much because obviously you're reading it from the point of view of the monster. So the monster is not anybody. The monster is this person. But you get it, like, it's the fringe of that. It's that idea of like, oh, are the people around you really what they seem? Or is one of them a big ball of goo that's stolen a skeleton and is running around now?
A lot of horror, most horror, I think it's like important to the genre, is that the readers experience sort of a sense of dread or fear or something, and that's removed from this because it's from the monster's perspective.
Yeah.
So you're seeing characters react in fear, but you're not really feeling that dread yourself because...
Yeah. She never really feels fear intensely. Like at some point she's like concerned or angry, but she's never terrified. And it's
No.
I liked the first few chapters because even though it's from point of view of the author, it made me uncomfortable imagining sucking stuff into my body and trying to build a skeleton out of it and using rocks for shoes and all that kind of stuff. That still made me uncomfortable, and it made me, I don't want to say upset, but like that's, to me, the definition of horror is that discomfort, right? Because everyone has a different level of discomfort. So I think it still fit the bill in that sense, but it lost it after the first couple chapters. And then you had it a bit again when the Baroness is revealed as to also be one of these creatures. And there's like kind of some of that stuff. Like that discomfort is really important. I think you nailed that, Allison, that's kind of the key to horror in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I've been thinking about horror a lot because I've just been reading a book about writing horror by a horror author. A lot of horror readers, nothing actually makes them that afraid. Like, they're not actually scared when they're reading horror, but they love it anyway. And so it's actually more the character that you're in the viewpoint of experiencing fear. You might not necessarily be afraid yourself as a reader.
Yeah.
But you're still sort of feeling it vicariously through a character. And often you do have like a sense of dread and like suspense. And horror.
Yeah, I think dread and suspense are two really big things.
And so that was missing for a lot of these chapters. So it does lean more romance.
For me, I do still feel like that middle part, I would maybe say is still horror. And like we can totally talk me out of this is totally fair. But like, because for me, it's not necessarily always just fear or suspense, but it's also just like discomfort. Like, because like body horror, I think of it as just being like, it's not necessarily that I'm afraid of it. It's just like, ew, that's uncomfortable. And I felt the same way about like that emotional stuff. Like her family, when you meet Homilly's family, who they're awful. They're all like abusive, like horribly, like physically and emotionally and verbally. Like, and that gave me a ton of discomfort and like feeling awful. So I'm like, is that not still like horror-esque, that kind of discomfort, like psychological
I think this
horror,
was marketed correctly, this novel. Like, it is horror romance. It's just not what I expected.
Yeah, it's a different type of horror.
It definitely still has horror, because there are a lot of like films, for example, like Mother, Midsommar. Like there's quite a few films that really, Midsommar a little less so, but like there are horror elements. There are people dying. There are people being skinned, but you don't actually see the act. It's not particularly gory. It is like very much a psychological horror. And I think, a little bit of that is this. With the heavy emphasis on romance, her family being crappy didn't feel like horror to me. It felt like a romance where it's like, there's the trope in romance of like, who did this to you? Looking at the scars on someone and being like, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to take them down kind of thing. Like it felt more like that.
Yeah.
There is a big debate in the horror community of if cozy horror even exists.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Because they're
I've
so
seen some of that.
antithetical to each other. And I used to be very much on the side of like, I don't think it exists. I think there are horror movies that you can find comforting. Like there are a lot of horror movies that I rewatch that are like comfort shows or movies to me that are horror, but it's not because of the movie itself. It's because of my, my personal nostalgia or whatever towards them. I think this is actually a really good argument that cozy horror does exist.
Yeah.
Because this is the first media I've encountered where I'm like, I can't describe it as anything other than cozy horror.
That's funny.
So
I'm always hesitant to say something doesn't exist because then someone will come along and prove you wrong, right?
When I think of cozy, it's often like, in terms of genre, it's like that feeling of like safety and warmth and comfort, which I think is maybe like how the romance plays into this, because like there's horror, but then there's also safety for the characters within the horror, and so maybe that's what kind of gives it that like cozy aspect as well.
Mm-hmm.
I view personally cozy as lack of conflict. And I think that's why I don't like a lot of cozy literature and stuff like that, is when there's always conflict in any story, no matter what. But if the conflict is like...
It's like low stakes conflict.
Super low stakes.
Yeah.
Like there's conflict, but it's like super low stakes. And to me, I'm like, I already deal with low stakes every day of my life, working a job and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So like, to me, I don't want to escape into that. But this one, even though it was realistically kind of big stakes, the focus wasn't on the big stakes. It was on the relationship a little bit.
It's a small stakes story because it's not about the world ending. It's not about any bigger.
It's about
it's
saving
life and death, but life and death of like two people, not
exactly
like, the whole world. Yeah. So not low stakes for the individual characters, but low stakes in the like low stakes in the like greater scheme of things.
And in the realm of sci-fi and fantasy.
I was gonna say in the realm of sci-fi and fantasy and horror, it's like usually like really big, like you're gonna die, and there's a serial killer on the loose who's murdering everyone in town every Halloween.
Yeah.
And this one is just like, no, it's just kind of one dick. And you gotta take care of it, and you're like, oh, okay.
And I mean, we've talked already about how this definitely fits a lot of the tropes of a romance novel, which like the big one, there's a love story that's at the center of, of the plot. These two characters meet and fall in love, and like Christiana said, it is that insta-love trope, which I feel like horror and romance are both very like trope-loving genres. Like all genres have tropes, but I feel like horror readers and romance readers especially are like, this is the trope that I like, this is the trope I don't like, and which is very interesting. So like insta-love is definitely either you love it or you hate it. Like it's a thing.
Yeah, I wrote it down a few tropes that I noticed. So I don't think this is the proper name for it, but like the Romeo and Juliet, you're not supposed to be
forbidden
together,
love.
you're enemies. It's a secret at first that Homily is technically Shisheshin's enemy. And then it's revealed later, and then that causes conflict between the two, which is fun.
But like no secrets. Conflict. Realistically, she's like, by the way, I'm the monster you've been hunting, and she's like, you? But I love you so much. And it's like literally one page. I think that's my frustration with it.
Yeah. The conflict I was referring to was when she was keeping the secret.
Oh, okay.
But then but when she reveals, it was a little bit anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Usually in a romance, when that's revealed, then the other character gets mad and like leaves for a bit or whatever. And they come back later. So that was interesting. But very cozy.
Yep.
Very cozy. That's what I'm saying. Like very... I don't want to say conflict avoidant, because there's definitely still conflict in it, but the relationship was very like I said, insta-love, very little conflict in the relationship itself. There's internal conflict for each of the characters. Like Homily has to eventually share that she is hunting a monster, and then Shisheshin is the monster that she's hunting kind of thing, right? Like there's that, but it's like very quickly resolved in a simple conversation, and that's kind of it. So
which I think fit the theme, because the like, does, sort of not moral of the story, but you know, the theme of the story is definitely like, who is a monster, and it's like this person who is eating people isn't actually monstrous. It's this abusive family that's monstrous, and so Homily like realizes, oh, you're what everybody's been telling me is a monster, but you've been kind and loving to me, and so maybe you're not a monster. But there did have to be some hand waving, because like Shisheshin does also kill and eat people, and like Homily is entirely unfazed by that, and it's like, maybe you should still care a little bit that she kills and eats people. Like, this isn't a complete non-issue. We could have at least talked about it.
She also only conveniently eats people who really suck.
Yes,
and there's
they really sidestepped the ethics of that issue.
That's what annoyed me, I think, the most. I'm going to compare it to the Book Eaters. Like I said, we covered it in our last season, where the mom has to feed her child with human brains, and she actually has to go really out of her way to find crappy people to bring back to her kid, and she struggles with it morally and ethically.
She purposely finds good people because her son absorbs their personalities and she wants him to be good. So she finds him good people to eat.
Is that? Oh my God! It's been.
We are remembering this book. We're not. It's been too long since we read this book.
Yeah, she thinks that it would be easier if she could find bad people, but it's like, oh, but then my son would.
Yeah. That book really does a good job of wrestling with the ethics and the morality, and someone you can build a nest in just didn't tackle that at all.
Yeah, and that would have been awesome. Yeah. Like, I would have loved to see that. Again, personally, I understand that the story is great.
Personally,
as it is, I would have found that too. Like, if if one of the hunters had been Homily and the monster like takes her prisoner, and then they like grow to love each other while also like realizing that she is killing and eating people.
It's an unhealthy dynamic, and
that would have been for me personally more fun.
Yeah.
I did like that they did this subversion of the beauty standard.
Oh, I want to mention.
Yeah, Allie, sorry, I'm
the one who wrote this down in our notes because romance novels are often about beautiful people, as we know, and
conventionally beautiful people. Yeah,
conventionally beautiful, physically attractive according to society.
Yes,
and I love this about the book that Shisheshin describes Homily using adjectives and descriptions that aren't socially conforming to beauty standards. I should have written down what some of them were, but I think she's like a bit plumper.
Yeah, they use terms that are used often in our current society as a very negative thing, but Shisheshin uses it very positive.
Yeah.
It's like,
or she calls her like delightfully fat, and it's just like and like genuinely, not in like fake way or like a backhanded way. It's
so
like
happy.
Genuinely,
she thinks it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I loved that so much.
Yeah, I did too.
This is so good.
Like she describes, there's like the one moment when they first meet, and she was like, "Oh," and then her belly is swaying, and in any other book, you'd be like, "That'd be such a negative thing." And Shisheshin is like deliciously immediately afterwards like, oh my God, look at this idol. Like it's so like it's very so positive lovely. In that way. I like that. Yeah.
And also not in like a weird, like you don't even get the sense that it's like a just a physical thing of like, oh, this is like just her, like, or like a fetishy thing or anything either. It's just she thinks this person is so wonderful. She's got like that everything about her is just absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And like, how could she be anything except gorgeous and beautiful? Because she's like, it's just so sweet to like have the protagonist be just like so in love with this other person. And like, it's very heartwarming.
I think I would have been interested if Shisheshin was lent more into her monstrous nature and like did end up like killing Homily and using for her nest, but that was her way of loving her or something. Like just getting real creepy.
I agree. I would really thought that was how the book was going to end.
I thought that was where it was.
That it's like she loved her so much she had to destroy her kind of thing. Like that would have really fit into the horror genre.
But it goes more into
the romance, the happily ever after.
Which is fine.
I was disappointed because at the beginning of the novel, they do talk about that. Like, she talks about how when she was born, it was, like, in the cavity of her father's body, and then they ate him. And, like, she, like, reveres him as, like, what a wonderful person. He gave his life for us. And then it turns out that wasn't the case, and her mother just planted her eggs in an unwilling human, and they killed him. And that made me sad, because I was like, oh, I do like this different idea of love. Like, wouldn't that be cool if it was a monster that like gave its life for its children in that way? So I was disappointed by that. I was like, oh, that would have been
I like that, because to me that was more horror than like a willing host kind of thing.
Fair.
Because like that to me creates that discomfort and that level of, because like I said, with things like The Thing or Invasion of the Body Snatchers or It Follows or whatever, side note, horror in general always kind of denotes what's happening in the current cultural moment, like what the fears are of the culture. It's really interesting. If you go back and watch horror movies from the 80s versus the 90s versus the 2000s versus the 2010s, you can generally get a hint of what is the cultural fear of the moment. I like the idea of, someone, because you so often see like The Thing their body is taken and there's the kind of no consideration for it. The idea of like, you were forced for your body to experience this thing, but the thing that's inside you loves it and views it as love when you view it as an invasion. Like that to me is a really interesting kind of concept to explore.
This conversation has solidified for me that I don't like horror. I just like dark. I like dark. I like dark, but I don't like the horror because I want the father to have done it, and it's like gruesome and awful, but also like not horror.
A sacrifice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to romance.
Yes, back to
romance. A couple
romance.
other romance tropes, which kind of links to the beauty one, is the not like other girls trope, where Homily is not like other girls because Shasheshan falls in love with her.
I don't know if I would say that fits into that trope necessarily.
No?
I feel like the not like other girls trope is more of a thing of like, I'm special because I'm not like girls and other girls are stupid and silly, and isn't it so nice that I'm
not like a girly girl.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it sort of fit that because she isn't that beauty standards, so it's sort of subverting it in that she's not like other girls and that she's not this beautiful character that you would normally see in romance novels.
Yeah, but I don't know that that's ever played for like superiority. Like they never look at anybody else and be like, oh, she's so beautiful and therefore is vapid and vain, and
that's
you can
true.
only... So I think it's actually in a more the way it's supposed to be of like, you're not like other girls because I love you and therefore you're special to me, as opposed to the like quote unquote not like other girls trope, which is you're not like other girls because other girls are stupid and therefore you not being feminine is the best thing you could possibly be because women suck sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then you have sort of some fairy tale romance subversion going on, where you have this knight in shining armor in the beginning coming to kill the monster, but then it turns out the knight is this pompous
wearing such fancy armor he can't pick himself up off the floor. Yeah.
Yes.
It reminded me a little bit of Nimona, the graphic novel, and now a Netflix movie that we discussed last season, I think.
Season 1.
Where there...
Yeah, I think it was season
already.
1.
Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, where there's a character like that who's sort of lots of subversion going on in that.
Yeah. I think it also subverts the idea, and that's very common in horror, of people versus monsters. Like, again, The Thing, even like pick any slasher in the world, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, like all that stuff is just like a group of people against a monster.
And this is
a monster against a group of people.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. I've heard from people who write romance and read romance that we always talk about how like there's no rules in writing, but for romance it's like the only one where there is an absolute rule, which is like it has to end in happily ever after. Like if it doesn't, it's not a romance.
It's not
like people will be mad. And it's like this has that. They end happily ever after.
Yeah.
They get to go live in the cave, which is like very cute. Yeah. And they have offspring and
y'all don't read enough fan fiction to stick to the rule that it has to end happily ever after.
Well, fan fiction is different. Fan fiction is its own thing.
What annoyed me about this, though, okay, so it ends happily ever after. The main character, they collect their offspring. Homily is with them. They go into hibernation. It should have ended. There's this one scene where they're eating dinner, and Homily is kind of making fun of her and like eating really aggressively. And it's like by the end of dinner, it was like our first proper date, and we were covered in food and laughing. Perfect ending. And then afterwards, it was like, what if we named this offspring Epilogue? And then it went on for like 2 chapters of
I love
stuff that didn't matter.
Great.
I don't know. It annoyed me a little bit, where I was like, I think that's like a touch too on the nose. Like it's cutesy. For sure it's cutesy. But I was like, just title it Epilogue and move on. Like we don't have to do this.
I thought that was cute.
Yeah. My favorite part was where it was like just her, like just Shasheshan and Homily. So I loved that those chapters were included, because I was like, I like the beginning where it was just the 2 of them. I like the end where it was just the 2 of them. I didn't like any of the other characters being included. So I was like, yes, give me more of them just living in this cave.
Yeah.
It was a little convenient that Shasheshan was able to have a baby in
without
quotation marks.
implanting her eggs into
Yeah,
Homily.
like that world
Yeah.
building
That
was
also
sort of
annoyed me.
set up,
Yeah.
and then it's like, oh, actually, we don't need that.
Yeah.
That doesn't need to happen.
By the power of love, I made a baby.
Yeah.
And I was
For
like,
anyone
that
who hasn't
seems
read it,
weird.
it's like this monster is supposed to only be able to procreate by like inserting her eggs into somebody, and that becomes this whole thing where like she has this longing to insert her eggs into Homily. But then she ends up kind of like she reproduces asexually, where like
alive.
yeah, but it like
It's
she
like
ends
the
up like
most
splitting
important
off a
thing.
part of her body, and it becomes this other monster that they call Offspring, and then they later named Epilogue. So yeah, it is like she managed to have a baby, but not.
That felt too convenient.
It
for
would have.
me.
I would have
think
loved
that's
the angst of like that not happening, and her because there's also a thing where like they only get one clutch of eggs in their whole life, and that's how these monsters reproduce. And then that clutch of eggs ended up getting destroyed in the battle with her mother. And I would have liked the angst of like maybe her having to deal with that of like, oh, now I'm never going to have this thing that I thought that I wanted. What will my life look like now? So her wrestling with that would have been interesting. But didn't happen, and they ended up, married with a kid essentially in this cave that they're living in.
But Homily didn't have to die for it or anything like that. It was just like a touch too convenient of an ending for me, where I was like, I get it. Like it has to be a happy ending, but it's like too happy and convenient of an ending. Like give us a little.
We're all
extra.
angst-ridden folk. With that, I think it is time for Proprietor's Pick. Allison, I know that you went through a few trying to get the perfect pick for this one. What did you end up landing on?
And I went rogue. My Proprietor's Pick is neither horror nor romance.
Oh, there you go.
So if you didn't like this book, you may not just kidding.
I picked a genre blend because we're talking about how to blend genres a lot in this episode. And so I recently read this book. I've been waiting for like a year to read it actually because it was released in the UK first and I was really excited about it. But it wasn't available here in Canada yet because the publishers thought it was too weird and wouldn't sell well.
Oh, I love it.
Rude. It sold great. And then, of course, the US and Canadian publishers picked it up.
People like weird.
Yeah. And so it is a fantasy/murder mystery.
Ooh, love it.
Set on a magical cruise ship, and aboard are the heirs of the 12 provinces of Concordia, and they basically all have a hidden superpower. So it's like superpower magic system type thing, and the world building is really fun. And the main character is this, like, cinnamon bun, bisexual disaster type character.
That's actually my description on LinkedIn. Cinnamon bun, bisexual disaster. Yeah.
And it's very, like, sort of got contemporary vibes, but in a fantasy setting. Like, in his first scene, he, like, shoots finger guns at someone. And that's just, like, a very,
I love it. Yes. The awkwardness.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
And there is a very strong romance subplot in this book. So if you do like romance, that's in there. And it was just so interesting seeing reading a murder mystery, because it is very much a murder mystery, but set in this fantasy, very heavily world building, and magic world. And I really, really liked it.
I love it when
was
it's
so
like
much fun.
This could be a contemporary fiction, but it just happens to be in a fantasy world. I feel like slice of life fantasies too. Like, I mean, I love a cozy fantasy. So like that's always like something I really
and you
like,
couldn't it's not like you could sort of pick up the story and put it in a contemporary because it's so entrenched in the fantasy world.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So this book is called Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. It came out in January of this year, and I loved it.
Cool.
So highly recommend it.
Ooh,
That sounds
if you
right
like
up my alley.
genre mashes. Then check
Yeah.
us out on bookshop.org, where you can support us and an indie bookstore at the same time.
I'll put the links in the show notes. You can buy Voyage of the Damned or someone you can build a nest in if we haven't totally turned you off of it.
You were so...
I feel like you'll know if this is a book you like. Right?
Yeah. I think we've done a good job describing it, so you'll
It's a good book. I want to say that again. It's a great book. It's just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not for us.
I'm
Not for
definitely
us,
going to
yeah.
look at more stuff that this author has written because I really liked his
Yeah.
writing style, and I think he's a really
The
good
writing
writer.
was great.
Yeah.
So if he writes something that's more in my genre, I would be very
Is this
excited
his
to pick it up.
debut?
I think
so.
he won awards for short story writing
Oh, cool.
previously, which actually, when I looked that up, I was like, that makes sense.
And with that, we are at last call. So here are some concluding thoughts and questions that we think you can take from someone you can build a nest in and apply to your own world building. So I thought something that this book did really well was having the world building support the plot. Like the fact that the monster can mimic human appearance is crucial. The fact that she like absorbs people entirely when she eats them becomes crucial to the plot. And I think that that's always a really good sign of world building is like, if you can't lift out the world building without changing the story, then I think that's good. Like it should, in my opinion, it's always best when those things are really tightly
Yeah,
intertwined.
if you could pick up your story and plop it into another world or into like the contemporary world, then you're probably not doing your world building right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you're making your world building, or whichever way you do it, like whether you come up with the plot first and then the world, or the world first and then the plot, make sure you go back and kind of make sure that they're all tied together, because that's always really satisfying for your readers.
For sure.
Allison, what do you have for us for someone you can build a nest in? What do you think people can take away from it?
When writing a genre blended story, you will probably want to choose one genre as a base.
Yeah.
So at its heart, is your story about solving a murder? The base is probably mystery, which is what Voyage of the Damned is. Or is it about two characters falling in love? The base is probably romance, which was what someone you can build a nest in. And then think about how you might add elements of another genre. And genre is so interesting because it's different depending on what the genre is. So like in Voyage of the Damned, the genre is the setting. The fantasy genre is the setting. But in Someone You Can Build a Nest In, horror is more about specific tropes and creating these feelings in your reader. So it really depends what the genre is, but really know your genre well and how to evoke whatever it's supposed to evoke.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is something that Someone You Can Build a Nest In does well, because they do have that happily ever after. It would have been really easy to take it down a much darker turn, but then it wouldn't be a romance anymore. So the fact
but then
that
it would be a horror, and you would have to change
he
the plot.
decided to make the base a romance, and then
Yeah.
went from there.
Yeah.
So.
And Christiana, what question or thought do you think we can take away from Someone You Can Build a Nest In?
Yes. So as the resident horror freak, horror is a very, very subjective thing. So what's scary to yourself might be a total walk in the park for others. So for example, I love snakes, but I think other people are absolutely horrified of them. But what you can take into this world building is that what might not be scary to you might be scary to others, but also more importantly, leave space for people to fill in their own fears. I think that's the hallmark of a really good horror story. This one, we kind of know what the beast is, but it's not described perfectly, and that kind of leaves those gaps for people to fill in and say, what can she actually do, and what does this actually look like? So sometimes what you imagine to fill in the gaps can be the scariest possible thing. So I think when you're world building in a horror, leave some of those gaps for your viewer or reader or whoever to kind of fill in with their own fears.
I love fear of the unknown
Same.
in horror stories.
That's the thing that gets me.
It's so much more scary than sometimes when the details are revealed about what the monster is. Then I'm less scared.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, now I know.
I love creature features where it's like, there's this scary creature hunting us, whatever. If I'm watching a horror movie that's a creature feature and I see the creature within 20 minutes, I don't care. It's not scary to me.
Yeah,
you know,
gotta
whereas
have that mystery.
You get like the Blair Witch is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
Like in the Blair
Stranger
Witch.
Things.
Stranger Things is pretty good too. But I think for like a tight 90 minutes, if you're looking for a really tight example, Blair Witch, it's not the best movie. It's not the scariest movie. It's certainly a nostalgic watch kind of thing. But you don't ever actually really see the Blair Witch, despite being the title of the movie. And it's this idea of what is it and what is it not that I think freaks a lot of people out. So really lean into that. Yeah.
I do love the first season of Stranger Things so much for the fact that you don't know what's going on at first.
Yeah. And that's
all
what
these
makes
weird
it freaky.
things are happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love all the seasons of Stranger Things. But the first one in particular has that unknown fear.
We keep waiting to record
whatever...
Stranger Things. Whenever the next season comes out, one of these days we will talk about it on the podcast.
We're going to talk about it, yeah.
Whenever
I love
Netflix
it so
gets
much.
it
It's one of my
together.
favorite shows.
Whatever the consumer is imagining is probably scarier than what you built. Because they're filling it in with their own fears, right? So just keep that in mind with your world building.
Yeah. That is all great advice. Unfortunately, this brings us to closing time. We'd love to stay longer, but we have bread to bake. That's right. Our tavern makes our bread in-house. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us at the tavern. If you just can't bear the thought of waiting 2 whole weeks for another episode, then you should definitely join us at patreon.com/worldbuilderstavern for our world building workshops, which are monthly bonus episodes of the podcast where we build an element of a world and are super fun. This month, we built a creation myth, which... how many times can I call this super fun before it gets redundant? Is super fun.
So fun.
So
it's
fun.
The most fun.
And educational.
Yeah.
Which you can't go wrong with. In our description, you can check there for a link to help a Palestinian family escape Gaza as well. You can find the World Builders Tavern on our website, www.worldbuilderstavern.com, which has links to other places we are on the internet, like TikTok, Discord, and our bookshop.org page, where you can buy books that we have talked about on the podcast. We hope to serve you here again soon, but until next time, scram!
Get out of here.